All right, everybody. Happy Wednesday. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the Boston Massacre. All right, so we talked about how the colonists were getting very upset at the king. The taxes were too high. Everything was too much. They needed to make it, they needed to do something. So what they did was they, threw the tea in the ocean. That was too expensive for them. They were upset, so they protested. And they threw that tea in the ocean, and then the king and the British, they had to respond. They had to be like, you know what? No, you can't do things like that. No, not under my watch, right? So, what happened was the Boston Massacre, and we're going to talk about that today. So here on this slide is what you're watching. This is the video. I did post another video here I do want you to watch when we're all wrapped up for today. This video just kind of does a good job of telling what happened. It's kind of in graphic novel form, so it's kind of in a comic form. But anyway, today's a little bit different. I didn't type anything. All right, I'm not going to type with you. I'm going to talk about what I typed, and you can write down those notes as well. Okay, so on this slide, you're going to write down exactly what I have. So remember that what was going on at this time, all right, so the British needed that money after the 7 Years' War. In the video, you'll hear them call it the French and Indian War. But for us, those two things are the same. Okay, they're a little bit different in history, but for us, they're the same thing. Okay, so the king needs money because it's very expensive to run a war. All right, so then all of these decisions on taxing and, letting British soldiers stay in their house, the colonists were very upset by these decisions. Okay. And the last thing, the colonists decided to dump tea in the ocean to protest, right? King, here's what we think of your tea that you're making us pay so much for. Throw it in the ocean, right? So here, kind of the details about what you need to know about when this was. Also, I know that this was fast. Excuse me. If you need to pause while you're watching this, go ahead. Okay. But details: the day was March 5th, 1770, 1770. Okay, so you can think of like an early March day. February just ended. There's probably a lot of snow on the ground. It's cool. Spring is coming soon, but it's not quite there yet. So, now we're going to talk about what happened, right? And then this box over here, you can see this is for two pictures that we'll find, right? So, what happened? First, the British marched into Boston, so they, heard that there was this Boston Tea Party, made them upset. They marched into Boston to help keep that peace. While they were marching in, a British soldier started kind of arguing with the colonist who was kind of standing there. The colonist was saying like, hey, like you don't belong here, go back to Britain. We don't want you here, those sorts of things. The British soldier is kind of arguing back. So it wasn't anything big, just two people kind of arguing. So number 3 here, a crowd formed. So other colonists started kind of like, what's going on over there? Okay, a lot of people started coming over there, and they started arguing too, started shouting, and they started throwing some snowballs. Okay. So there were, like I said, there was snow on the ground. They were throwing that snow. Some British soldiers were saying like, hey, there's rocks in this snow. That's dangerous. But that really wasn't the biggest deal. Then what happened is kind of when history in the world changed. All right. So what happened was a British soldier who was just standing there while they were getting hit with snowballs, he heard someone say fire. Okay. And if you know anything about war or guns, when you say fire, that means to shoot your gun. Right. And so this British soldier heard someone say fire. And so what happened was the group of British soldiers that were there started shooting at the crowd, right? Once somebody started shooting, they're like, oh, I guess our orders are to shoot. And they started shooting into that crowd. All right. The captain of that group was like, no, what? Well, no firing. No, we never said we're going to fire. No, what are we doing? But it didn't matter because once, the shooting ended, once all that violence had kind of ended, they stopped shooting. 5 colonists died. They died from the gunshots of the British soldiers. All right. So now what we're going to do is first pause here if you need to copy anything down. But if you are done here, we're going to move on, find some pictures. So before, I guess I forgot the last one here. Number 7. The first death was that of Crispus Attucks. Okay. So he was the first death, and this is going to start the American Revolution. And a lot of people say that he was the actual first death of the American Revolution. Changed the world. It made our country the way that it is today. There was no United States of America back in this time in 1770. Now there is. Us becoming our own country all started because of this. So, Boston Massacre. I'm going to find a picture here. It's up to you which one you want to do. There's a lot of them. There's some reenactment here. Some kids are doing it. So it looks pretty fun. Let's do this one here. You can do any picture that you would like. Copy and paste that. Okay, now so this is one picture that we're going to find. Another one that we're going to find is a picture of, we're going to look up Crispus Attucks. Okay, so here's Crispus Attucks. He was an African-American man, and he was the first American Revolution death. So you can see here, here's kind of a picture of the painting here, right when the shooting started. There he is. Here's a painting of what he looked like. He was someone who was in Boston to kind of help the colonists survive, really. Try to, get rid of the British soldiers that are just kind of, bullying pretty much. I'm going to take this picture. It looks very heroic. So I'm going to copy image here. And we'll paste. So, Boston Massacre up here. That's what happened. You can see Crispus Attucks is down here on the ground. But here's a picture of him as well. That's the Boston Massacre. Okay. Last thing that I want you to do today is on this last slide. You have to. So what now? Okay. This happens. Should the colonists aim for peace? Should they say, "Hey, King, wow, yikes, we don't want to have that happen anymore. Let's relax. Let's be peaceful." Or should they say, "You know what? That was an act of war. You are trying to battle us on our own land. You came to our, area. You came to our city, Boston, and you fired on us. We're going to see that as war." So now you decide, should the colonists try to keep the peace, keep it so less people die, or go to war and fight back against the king? Okay? So you're just going to put a circle around which one you think, and then that's it for today. All right? We'll talk about what's next and what the colonists are going to do next tomorrow. All right?